we'll talk about some more issues, but let's bring in our guest because I know she's anxious to talk about all these subjects. Reta Jo Lewis, candidate for mayor. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Tom. Glad to be here with you and Patrick.
Are you glad, we're going to later talk about the Maryland governor's race, are you glad that you don't have to name a running mate in the mayor's race?
Yes, I am.
You have any thoughts about the JFK?
You were asking Patrick.
I'm not asking how old you are.
Hey, I was 10 when that happened. And I would tell you, I too was raised in the Deep South, and I do remember that day. And
Where's
you know
it?
why?
What's Scottsboro? No,
Statesboro, Georgia.
Statesboro.
My mom and dad had been real champions in the community as leaders and working with NAACP and as civil rights leaders. And so, a few short years after that, I integrated my junior high school. So it had been issues that my parents had been working on. And when the Kennedy assassination happened, it really was like a dream deferred. And people were really hopeful in that administration and what he stood for.
You're in the Deep South, and you were about this. What were the ages of the 4 young girls at the Baptist church?
It was the very
same
young,
year, right?
yes,
the same year.
Exactly.
People forget what that was. The march was that year, and
that's right.
The bombing of the Birmingham church.
The bombing
4
of the
young
Birmingham
girls.
church.
You could have been one of them.
Well, I'm telling you, our hearts always go out to any of and all of these leaders and young people who lives were sacrificed, lives were lost. But that work still has to go on because we still have a lot of the inequities that we were talking about back then.
The work is.
Fighting the battle.
Let's just get to this is the politics hour. So here we go. How many signatures have you raised of the 2,000 you need? You don't have to turn them in to January 2nd, but how are you doing on the signatures? I know you were out this morning at a metro stop with the Shaw neighborhood.
That was 2 days ago. I was actually in Anacostia.
Were the trains running? Metro? I'm not sure how many trains were running this today.
I was over at the on Howard Road over in Anacostia, and the buses were running fine, and the trains were running, and people were really hopeful. And I was asking them not only to just sign my petition, but talking about myself and introducing myself to them, hearing firsthand from them their issues, and they were very, very encouraging and signing the petition. So we're really excited.
How you doing you got a rough number now?
You know what? We're working hard every single day.
No is the answer. Okay.
Every day.
All right, Patrick,
Every
take
day.
it over.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's just jump right into the minimum wage issue because we were just talking about that, and that seems to be one of the key issues this campaign. Where do you come down on this in terms of where a minimum wage should be and whether tipped workers should be included?
I just recently had an opportunity to be always talking with the residents. I would tell you, I always start out with the fact that, as a resident who is trying to, take their kids to school on public transportation, trying to feed their kids, trying to put a roof over their heads, I want them to make as much money as they possibly can. And so, there's a lot of numbers that's out there. And I think we can't, I don't want to get caught up in the numbers game, but I would tell you that we got to be competitive with the region. We definitely understand from a federal perspective it's at 10. Our council is at 11-ish. And, others are at that living wage, around 12.
Let's hear from a caller who wants to talk about the minimum wage. It's Perry. I guess he's from the district, and he's appalled that candidates are talking about the minimum wage, but nobody in the council has done anything about it. Mm-hmm. Perry, are you there?
I am.
Okay.
Hello.
Thank you. What's your question?
Yeah. Sure. And thank you for expounding on my point, Tom. Factually speaking, we have 4 council people who are running for council, and they have all of a sudden gotten religion. I listened to the minimum wage hearing where Councilman Orange, he said social justice out of his mouth probably 5 times. And we've got Muriel Bowser, who's been on the council since '07. Wells been on the council since '07. We haven't given a darn about working class folks and raising the wage so that it's not only competitive with Maryland or Maryland or Virginia.
Right. Well, the city's talked with Montgomery County and Prince George's about maybe all doing. I think Montgomery County was taking a vote in the last day or so, if not today, about raising the matter to $11.50. Do you have a specific question for Ms. Lewis about if you can pin her down on a number she'd support?
Sure, I do. When I ran for council in the past spring election, I proposed $14.50 an hour, and it is so very important that workers in D.C. stay in D.C. So my question is, how do you, as a Democrat, because Democrats have chosen to keep wages low and depressed. How is you as a Democrat plan on running and doing something different for the citizens of Washington, D.C., yet be out of step with your party that has all of a sudden gotten religion?
Okay. Well, first, you said you don't want to name a figure that you have.
Well, I mean,
1150 sounds about right.
Yeah, I think 1250 does sound right.
1250.
Yeah, I think 1250 does right. When you're talking to individual moms and dads, they will tell you that it's hard to live in this city. But
And how
we
about
still,
the tipped workers?
Now the tip workers, I was actually talking to some restaurant owners the other night at their home, and they were talking about the fact that they want to be competitive. And that number seems to be exempt right now from the discussion. So I know that there's going to be a lot more conversations around that. But I will tell you at the end of the day, when your caller was saying, how are you going to really make life better for the residents in the District of Columbia? And it all boils down to the fact that they all have to have a seat at the table. And right now, as the candidate of change, and as someone who is not a part of the current practices, I think he's absolutely right. People are trying to get religion to talk about how they're going to take care of working families. But at the end of the day, working families want you to be not only pragmatic for them, but they want you to be in an environment that you tell them the truth. And they just want to be able to have a seat at the table and a voice in the conversation.
Right. You were at the candidate forum with the D.C. Bar almost 2 weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago. Days go by so fast it's hard to tell. I heard a lot of criticism of you, and it kind of goes like this. You're a nice person. You're a smart person. You are very confident in how you carry yourself. You present yourself as a good candidate, but you are not taking positions on a campaign on enough issues. Like you didn't want, I think, take a position on the height issue.
I did.
You did take a position.
Yeah, I said the question was about affordable housing, and I said yes, I would.
Higher buildings for affordable housing, but what is this about economic development to accommodate the 200,000 people expected to move here in the next 20 years or
We have to take all of that into consideration. But right now, our biggest problem is that people do not have a decent place to live, and they don't want to have a balance. And so if it does require us to raise the height limit, if we can get a 1-to-1, if we can, we need to not only look at just where development is going, but we need to look at what we have in our own stock.
But we've moved away from high-rise public housing and things like that because it didn't work. Now it's scattered housing in this other places.
Yeah, but people are trying to move into public housing. They're trying to move into affordable housing.
I know, but it's just. But what about the image? What is your response to the criticism that your answers are two ninth grade civics class, work together, come together, discuss, reach a common solution, bring the community in? You hear a lot of that from candidates in particular, and you are just, what's your reaction to that criticism?
You know what I say to you, you ask me a question, I'm going to give you an answer. But the overall vision, it still has to be about we're having a city that does work for everybody. We can't be a community that just allows certain voices to be at the table, and that's what's happening. If there are no plans, there are no strategies around so many of the big issues that we have.
Mayor Gray just announced $187 million of affordable housing.
Yeah, today.
Plan.
I mean, a couple of days ago.
And
but you know
$100 million last spring.
But and what has happened with it? When you hear advocates talk about, do we really have a plan? Do we have a strategy? I was listening at the hearing with them, and they said absolutely not. You know what? It's not about me being a nice candidate, but I will tell you I appreciate them saying I'm a smart candidate, because we do have to have someone in government who's going to have be able to not only take a position but also run this government.
Would you keep Chief Ellerby the fire chief?
He would not be my chief.
Patrick.
And I guess one of the things that came up in the first debate we had the other day was a lot of the candidates calling the mayor's campaign corrupt. Do you agree with that assessment that Gray's 2010 campaign was corrupt?
I think what we've read, and we can only go on what we have read, and what we know, is that 4 people have gone to jail that were involved in that campaign. The issue for me now is that the legal system is doing its job, and they're going to continue to do that job. As someone who is a lawyer, you can't rush that process. But what has occurred is that it's been a big distraction to what's going on in the city, about the big issues that we need to be taking on. It's been a big distraction about talking about how we're going to develop better schools and have develop better wages for our residents in the District of Columbia, how our businesses are going to be able to take advantage of all the largesse, how are we going to stop pushing people out of their homes. Those are the conversations that people want to have, and that's not taking place.
But you're listening to Reta Jo Lewis. She's an attorney, a diplomat, and a businesswoman. She's a candidate for mayor of the District of Columbia. Joining me in the studio today is Patrick Madden, a reporter for WAMU, and I'm Tom Sherwood from NBC4, sitting in for Kojo. But I think it's almost every political person. Muriel Bowser, her answer is she wants to move beyond. She's been critical of the ethics and made some changes in law. But the voters, yes, they want to hear about all those issues, but they want to know, do you think Mayor Gray should run for re-election? You're running to be mayor, but should Mayor Gray run, given all the troubles demonstrated in the court of law, troubles with his 2010 campaign, whether he's charged or not?
You know, the other day the mayor said no comment. I could not believe that based on what was happening with,
but what do you
in
think?
That conversation. Look, I'm running for mayor. And in running for mayor, it is because I firmly believe that the citizens of the District of Columbia deserve better. And in deserving better, it is a mayor who is going to ensure that when we talk about issues around education, when we talk about all issues, Tom, we got to have credibility.
I know, but
and right now,
this is like,
the credibility
to me,
is
as a
wagging.
reporter, and I can't speak for Patrick, but I'm saying this is like we're having a track meet, which is the race is the run from the start line to the finish line with who's going to do the best for the city going forward. The problem is we don't know what the start line is, or somebody cheated, put their toes over the start line, and done all these things. So that's why ethics are so important. That children are important. Police are important. Housing those things are important. But the ethical foundation of the city has crumbled in many respects because we have all these open issues.
It has crumbled because the current leadership has not taken it seriously and gotten it done. And
so, on that basis, do you think Mayor Gray has forfeited the moral authority of having run a campaign that has been demonstrated in court to be corrupt, that he shouldn't run again? I mean, that would, to me, would be a yes or a no if I were running.
I think the mayor should not be running for re-election based on everything that we have been told. But it is his decision, and the voters are going to be the ultimate decider. And in deciding that, when we're talking about ethics, when we're talking about reform, those are going to be critical issues. And that's why, look, I support the will of the people. And when they call for an attorney general to be elected by the citizens after we gave them the referendum that said that, our current establishment, including all of them, basically said that.
All right, let me finish up on this. All right, I want to ask you about Ronald Machen. He said, you're an attorney. He was a prosecutor. He said there's there. Mm-hmm. He said he's not fooling around. 4 people have pled guilty to felonies. There's there. What do you think about the investigation and what Ron Machen said?
I cannot speak for Ron Machen, but I can read his words. And if he says there's there, that's he's the prosecutor. All I can say is that the residents of the District of Columbia are going to have to make their decision, and they're going to have to make their decision based on individuals like myself who are coming to say, I have the experience, I have the qualifications, having worked in local government, having been on the front line in Department of Public Works, working around issues with women and girls. These are the things in the District of Columbia that I understand where we are here as a community, having worked locally, nationally, and internationally.
And Rita, you mentioned your work at DPW and some of the other local activities you've been involved in. Talk about, I mean, you're a relative outsider in this race compared to the 4 council members running. Talk about your executive experience. I mean, this becoming mayor of the district, $1 billion budget, yes. Many different agencies that you'll be in charge of. Can you talk about where you have had similar experience running an agency or department as an executive? You
know what? I am the senior executive in this race who have had the experience working with, as a chief of staff when I was in Department of Public Works. That was one of the largest agencies in D.C. government. I worked with administrator who had over 14 I worked with the chief administrator who had over 14 other administrators over departments, working with large staffs, working with large budgets at Department of Public Works. Public Works had a budget of $3,000. I was very fortunate to have been able to be the liaison to our different departments and to our budget departments, and to be able to have that kind of experience.
That was in the 1990s.
That was in the 1990s, and I did that as a younger person.
But the control board came came in the mid-'90s and took over the city because it was run so poorly. They didn't exempt that department either. They said all these departments were terribly run, so I'm not sure what. I mean, Betty Francis, you work for Betty.
I work for Betty Francis, who's a great administrator.
And she was, but it was just seeing the city was roiling in red ink back then. That's why the control board took over.
You know what? Not only did I do work with DPW, having had the recent experiences of working and running programs that have had large impact on people's lives, working with U.S. Chamber programming, having great impact with working with minority and women-owned businesses, bringing thousands of organizations together to work on business outreach. I mean, those are the kinds of experiences. Having just recently worked internationally, running a program at the State Department, being a senior diplomat there, having the ability to work with large bureaucracies and bring people together is a hallmark and a highlight of the work that I've done, and I'm very proud of that.
I think if I had one thing I could do as a reporter, if I could just get people not to say children's first or bring people together, because everybody can talk about issues. I mean, it just
they can talk, but I did it.
But in the city, I mean, do you know the city that you want to represent them? Can you? I'm not going to give you a geographic test or name all the department heads, because that's not important.
No, because they're not my department heads.
But the majority of your last 20 years has been in national and international affairs, and I looked at your campaign contributions. Many of them are people who are not identified locally. Obviously, some are. And again, one of the people here says that, she seems to be long on platitudes and not much else, and that you're more of the national, international city that this is, which is quite an accomplishment for you, but not local.
You know what? When I started locally here in the District of Columbia working as a chief executive in a department, it helped me to get to the national. The national then helped me got to the international. All three areas of government, as well as having worked in the private sector, has been very important for me to be able to sit in this chair and to talk to you and to talk to the residents of the district about having the experience and the qualification to lead a city that should be a world-class metropolis. We're not that because we've got so many inequities. And so, we can talk about the coming together, but if we are not going to actually do it, I have led that kind of change.
Go ahead, Patrick. It's one of the best economies in the world.
And just if you could sort of outline some more policy specifics, because you've talked a lot about bringing people together, but what specifically would you like to see happen? I mean, what changes would you make to the current administration?
Well, I'm not going to look at the current administration. I would tell you that in a Lewis administration, around issues around education, exceptionally, is going to continue to be important for us to be a great city. Right now, we have got to be continuing to look at where we are from a high poverty standpoint. We have 20% of a population that is still living below the poverty line.
No, those are descriptions of the issues. Andy Shalal has said he wants to make free public transit for all poor people. I don't know how he would define poor. Would you be for that? Because, again, you can describe the problem, but the solution is what people want to hear.
What I want to do, Tom, I'm going to tell you something. If a young person comes to school every single day, they really do, especially in a lot of our communities, especially where there's high poverty, they have serious issues around just survival.
But
so it's not just about their education. So I will lead an administration that wraps around services
but what
around
does that mean? I mean, Tommy Wells and Jack Evans, I think, but each one of them said, all right, if you're a high school student and you want a job, we'll get you an after-school job, but it just won't be summer jobs. Would you be for something like that?
You can't just throw out that without some real backbone behind that. But in an administration that I would lead, I am over the services that have to be wrapped around young people, wrapped around.
But when you wrap around, it sounds like I'm almost choking, because what does that
mean? Don't choke.
Sharon Pratt Kelly opened after-school centers for children to go to after school. They were out on East Capitol Street. They were on other places. They fell apart because they weren't supported. But that was. But she did try. She actually did something.
But you've got to bring.
Don't tell me bring people together.
No, not bring it. No. See, you may think that's funny, but right now,
funny. It's funny. I have to keep saying it.
No, right now, what's happening? It's not about. It is about the ability that whether you have your social services, it's about whether you have the ability to bring people to come and assist with young people. Right now, we're fighting on leaving library hours open. Why are we even doing that at this juncture? That should be something that
Jack Evans, who's running for mayor, he passed the bill to make the the libraries stay open 7 days a week.
And they still
But
are
just
out
like
there
on
fighting that battle.
Specifics. That's kind of what I think Tom and I are going for here in terms of education. Would you keep the structure the way it is with the school chancellor?
I think it's well, first of all, let me just tell you something. There's duplicity in that effort. In most states, and we are counting ourselves as a state, we need to have a strong state education director. We have a good superintendent who, once the mayor took over the schools in 2007, should still have that kind of access. We want to make sure that that focus continues to be there. In our school systems, it cannot just be about testing. That is one indicator. We should applaud
Would you
the
get rid of Common Core standards?
Oh, of course not. You cannot get rid of Common Core.
No, that's a program, Common Core standards. We replace No Child Left Behind,
I
which replaced
believe
Back to
in-
Basics, which replaced dinosaurs. I mean, there have been so many programs.
They've got a lot of programs, but at the end of the day, I am for accountability. I am for standards, but I'm also for empowering the parents and empowering the teachers. I mean,
what does that mean? What does empowering the teachers? They have a union. They have the impact system. What does that mean?
That means that we have to give them the authority because they are the COOs
They do have
in
the
their
authority.
schools.
They have the principals have the authority under the Michelle Reed
There
reform.
is silos that are still taking place in this government. People are still not having an understanding on who's really in charge.
Well, who is
the person that's supposed to be in charge of this is the mayor, and the person that should be. We don't need all these layers of bureaucracy about our education system.
Michelle Reed spent her entire time, 3 years of it, getting rid of these layers of bureaucracy and pushing the authority out to the principals. I mean, what bureaucracy are you talking about? You go down to the police, the education headquarters on First Street down off North Capitol, and there's not nearly as many people there as there used to be there earning the check and
that's
not
because
doing
they
much.
need to be. They're keeping it on our kids. This is where we need to be.
But that's what Michelle Reed did, and that's what Kaya Henderson is doing. Are you saying Kaya hasn't done enough? Or
No,
the
I
Office
think
of State School Superintendent hasn't done enough? You hear the frustration is that. Are you going to be putting out policy? Maybe it's still too early. As your gatherings, are you going to put out some policy statements of what you will do if you are elected as mayor? Because we all believe in children first. I mean, we all believe that the Department of Public Works ought to get the snow off the streets. We all believe the Department of Transportation ought to get the roads done and the curbs fixed when they're broken. But the question is, how is it going to get? Are you for the streetcar on 8th Street?
Oh, always. Why wouldn't I be?
Well, some people think it's horrendous the way it's not set off from traffic and cars. Adam Tuss from Channel 4 just did a story about trucks and cars and pedestrians and bikes are all blocking the road. Would you put up a barrier so the streetcar can be clear there?
I guess another way of putting this is there a single issue you think that you really stand out from your competitors on this?
I think there are three issues that I do stand out, primarily because I've not been a part of the past practices. I would, as mayor, lead a city whereby we have strong oversight responsibilities. We would let the people who I would appoint, like the Inspector General, do their job. We would make sure.
He does. I mean, one of the complaints is he doesn't do it fast enough. Would you get rid of him?
He's not doing it fast enough. He doesn't have enough autonomy.
Well,
he doesn't have enough resources.
I apologize. We're out of time. We've been listening to probably me complaining, but more so to Reta Jo Lewis.
Yeah,
She's an attorney,
Tom.
a diplomat, and businesswoman. She's a candidate for mayor of the District of Columbia. She's busy going out to the metro stops where the trains are running, and she's getting signatures. And good luck to you in getting the signature in for January 2nd.
Thank you,
Thank
Tom.
you for being here today.
No, thank you.